The time is 7:02, and I will call to order the special city council meeting for May 21st, 2018. Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Mrs. Keller?
Here.
Mr. Browning?
Here.
Mr. Rohr?
Here.
Mr. Hellinger?
Here.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Here.
Mayor Riggle?
Here. If you'll all please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Elaine, if you'll please read item 3 into the record.
Ordinance number 18-21 revised. An ordinance by Medrock LLC for approval of a revised zoning text amendment to the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract PUD overlay zoning text plan unit development to allow a modification to the maximum dwelling units and density to multifamily areas 3 and 4 to allow additional dwelling units in area 3 and removing units in area 4, thereby decreasing the overall units currently allowed in total located on the east side of Houck Road on approximately 38 acres on property zoned R6 multifamily residential district with a PUD plan unit development overlay.
Go ahead and read 4 too.
Ordinance number 18-22 revised. An ordinance for Medrock LLC for approval of a revised combined preliminary and final development plan to multifamily area 3, the Flats on Houck, of the existing Willowbrook Farm Tract for a 180-unit apartment complex on approximately 15.506 acres located on the northeast corner of Houck Road and DeGenova Way on property zoned R6 PUD, multifamily residential district with a planned unit development overlay.
Thank you. Mr. Eflin?
Madam Mayor, members of council, we gather again to talk about the Willowbrook Apartments. So I will go through a brief staff report coming out from Planning Commission, which occurred on May 2nd, at which time they did not recommend approval of either of the ordinances in front of you tonight. That is, they didn't recommend approval of the proposal. So if the computer will cooperate here. So we have the Willowbrook PUD, which is several hundred acres, as you know. We are talking about multifamily areas 3 and 4 as laid out in the original plan and in that zoning text. Area 3 has, as you can see here, is along Houck Road and Future Boulder Drive, and Area 4 is basically to the east of the community park. So this is a location map should we need to reference it for Area 3. And again, the comprehensive plan has multifamily for both of these areas, besides the easternmost portion of Area 4, which was originally laid out to have a small cul-de-sac of single-family homes. The current zoning of the zoning map is planned unit development for all of Willowbrook, but is also R6 for both of these, or multifamily for both of these multifamily areas. This is a color rendering of the original PUD. Again, should we need to reference it, Houck Road is on the top of this slide, so we kind of change the orientation. But if we need to reference it, we have it here available. So currently by right, under the current PUD zoning text, what does the applicant have the right to do? On Area 3, he has the right to do up to 140 units per that text. And on Area 4, he has the right to do 155 units. So in both of those areas, that totals to 295 total dwelling units between both of them. And they allow multifamily apartments, condos, single-family daycare centers, and some other uses in there. So what was the revised proposal? The revised proposal was for 180 units on Area 3. So that's plus 40 units. And then reducing 10 more units from the original proposal. So it would be 90 total units in Area 4 which is a reduction of 65 units. In total then, between the two, that would be 270 total dwelling units, as opposed to the 295 he has the right to do today. The reduction of 25. So that's kind of the zone change component of the case. So then zooming in on multifamily area 3, which is the combined preliminary final development plan component of the case. Here's an aerial photograph, really just in case we need to reference it. It's a little easier to see the area around it and such. And again, a close-up of this boundary that's closest to the single-family homes and the bit of Boulder that's built. And you can almost see where future Boulder Drive is going to go, just by the eyeball. One of the things we talked about at Planning Commission, the applicant agreed to do this at the commission. Was this bit of property is still owned by the LLC, and then this would be a bit of the remnant property above Boulder Drive, but part of this area 3. And then there appears to be, I've lost my arrow here, I'm sorry. There appears to be a landscape easement across the back of this lot. And so one of the things we talked about was having mounding and landscaping across all of that, at least consistent with the Houck Road mounding and landscaping, obviously learning our lessons from the past so that we're stepping back from intersections and not creating sightline difficulties and that sort of thing. But essentially what we'd be doing, what the applicant would be doing, is creating 2 rows of landscaping and buffering, one that's closer to the back of those homes, and then one still in the continuous 5-foot mound and trees on the apartment side or to the south side of Boulder as well. I think pretty obviously, you can see on the aerial photograph, the 2 homes at the end of Harmony Drive were platted and billed as quarter lots and just don't have the opportunity for mounding, though they may have the opportunity for some additional trees or landscaping. And you can see the homeowners have put some in, even on the aerial photograph, but there's probably room for a little bit more if possible, but it's tight. So the revised grading plan, we went over this a bit at planning again, in that the grading plan, the landscape plan weren't quite married up at the time in showing a continuous 5-foot mound. And there was basically a hole in the mound in this area across from Harmony Drive. And in discussions of planning and even subsequent and after planning, the applicant was clear that, and one of our conditions is clear that we have a continuous 5-foot mound and minimum trees planted in a staggered course, and that was the intention. So it's really just to get those 2 things married up. There was an exhibit shown, I think, at Planning Commission that showed there's different ways to engineer that, where you could do a retaining wall on the side of the apartments and still have your mound height down towards Boulder Drive and be able to put your trees up there. So or you could move the buildings back. There's different things you could do and achieve that recommended condition. So here you see the revised landscaping plan. And the only issue that we as staff had with this was that it visually shows 1 row of trees on top of the mound in a linear fashion. And our recommendation is to have a staggered course of trees, which really provides the maximum buffering. Again, at Planning Commission, we talked about this with the applicant, and he was fine with doing a staggered course of trees. I think it's just more a visual thing on the landscape plan. Obviously, if this is approved and goes to final permitting, staff would make sure that that is in accordance with all the conditions. There was a revised light plan to just have some photocells on some of the lights, meaning they would turn on and off automatically. It's very hard to see here. This was the original previously submitted color rendered plan, and it's the only full color rendered plan we have, so I kept it in here just for reference. But you can see the difference between the landscape plan I just showed and the one that's here, which doesn't have as much mounting and it doesn't have as much landscaping originally, and that's been updated in the revised proposal. And again, this was the original proposed building rendering of one of the buildings. I think this is building 7. the applicant can confirm that. Or does it say B2 there? I can't quite read it. Anyway, the architecture is high quality architecture, and all the buildings are a little bit different. And therefore they're not all exactly the same architecture put together exactly the same way, but it provides for some breakup of what otherwise would just be a large boxes of building. In addition to having lots of natural materials, patios and balconies, high-pitched roofs, some dormers, roof lines that break up what otherwise would just be one massive roof on a building. And that sort of thing. There are also attached garages, and there are detached garages sprinkled throughout the site, in addition to just open parking spaces, as you kind of see in this render. So there's a mixture of those things. I won't even go through every one of these, but you could tell on the elevation sheets just by dropping them in here that there were a number of different ones, which is what I just said. These are the floor plans. Again, you can tell there are a number of different floor plans, and just end on the rendering. So again, Planning Commission did not recommend approval of both of these cases, which had been remanded to them. And I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions for Ms. Joplin? Okay. Would the applicant like to come forward at this time?
Good evening.
Ron, will you bring that microphone up? There you go. Thanks.
Thank you. I'd like to respond to some of the other changes that. Introduce yourself for the record. Hi, I'm Ron Sabatino with TNR Properties. I'd like to start by summarizing some of the other modifications. I think that we listened carefully and believe that we have addressed all of the comments, all of the reasonable comments from that were on point of this community from the residents when we were before you before. And so I'm going to just take a moment and go through those modifications that your staff is aware of. One of the requests was to delete the dumpster on Boulder Drive. There was a dumpster near Harmony, a little bit west of Harmony on our site, and we've deleted that dumpster. The mound, there was some comments about more mounding and more buffer between the few houses to the north. And we've agreed with staff not only to put a minimum of a 5-foot mound, but in addition, we added trees. And along Boulder Drive alone, we have over 100 trees. Building 7 was shifted inward or south from Boulder Drive, approximately 9 feet. I will say as well that this planned development for all of the 300 acres has building setback lines. And the building setback line is the location of right where you're typically put the building. When you go down the residential sections, you'll see most of the houses are on the building setback line. The building setback line is 25 feet from the right-of-way along Boulder Drive. I think Boulder Drive, it has a large right-of-way. I mean, it's not the typical 50 or 60 feet. I think it's because it's a wider road, it's even larger than 60 feet. But the building line then is from the right-of-way, is 25 feet where generally you're allowed to put your buildings. All of the buildings on Boulder Drive, not just building 7, all of them are 20 more feet south of the building line. There were comments about the exterior elevations, and I want to restate that except for the 3 buildings facing east to the woods of the park and the wetlands, all of the buildings are four-sided in architecture, and so the rendering that David showed earlier that was viewed from our parking lot, the other side along Boulder Drive or Houck Road or DG Inova Way look exactly the same. Although we believe density is not an issue, there were some comments about density. We have 2 speakers tonight, one who spoke at planning and zoning, our expert witness, and the president of our company will speak briefly about density. For what it's worth, after this meeting tonight, I'm going to Pittsburgh for an 8 a.m. meeting. And in Pittsburgh, actually it's a suburb of Pittsburgh, about the same size as this city. A city that has similar zoning provisions that the city has. We're building 190 units on 9 acres. Density is not an issue. In summary, our proposal meets or exceeds all of staff's comments and expectations. It responds to all of the reasonable comments we had from our neighbors. It meets all of the 9 criteria that the city has chosen to review in 112909 revised code. We've eliminated all of the 3 bedrooms in order to reduce any impact and minimize any impact on the schools. The approval of this proposal allows for the portion of Boulder Drive to be constructed more timely so that the construction of the 85 single-family lots that will be in front of you next month, that the construction will need not cut through the neighborhood for as long as a period of time. The plan development encourages us to shift and modify the plan that was approved 20 years ago and encourages moving density to major arteries. We've moved 65 densities completely off the site, off the project, off the PUD, and taken only 40 of those and moved them right out on Houck Road. I'll be available for some comments yet tonight. I would like to introduce our 2 speakers tonight. First will be Tammy Potts, the president of TNR Properties, and then Mr. Robert Vogt, who we've retained to do a market report and help address for all of us the housing crisis in Delaware, in particular the multifamily portion of the housing crisis. So thank you. Ms. Potts.
Hi, I'm Tammy Potts. I'm the Chief Financial Officer and Chief Operating Officer and the President of TNR Properties. I hold an accounting degree from The Ohio State University and an MBA from The Ohio State University. I'm a certified public accountant in active status, and I have over 30 years in the real estate and property management industry. I've done financial analysis and pro formas for all my previous employers, which includes Equity Residential, a very large apartment community. I prepared the analysis for Mr. Sabatino from the financial side, and in my opinion, the 180 units is required to make this apartment community financially feasible. And if you look at just one apartment unit, each apartment unit is $14,000 in revenue. That seems like a lot, but there's a lot of expenses that go into account to manage that apartment community. So if you take away, just for math, if you take one, that's $15,000. If you take away four, that's $60,000. If you take away 8, that's $120,000 of revenue that can't be spent on that property to maintain it and keep it in the condition we need to keep it. Thus, in my opinion, it is still my opinion, that is needed 180 units to make this property financially feasible.
Can you explain how you went through the analysis?
I went through the analysis by taking all the unit types, the expected rent levels, based upon market studies that have indicated, what the opportunity is for people in this area, the opportunity or the cost that people are willing to pay for this level of luxury living and the amenities that are involved. And based upon my experience and the other financial experience of our other luxury properties, I used expenses based upon a cost per unit based over a period of time. Any questions? Thank you.
Ms. Potts, can you please just state your address for the record, please? Sorry.
It's okay. My address is 44 Tinley Park Circle, Delaware, Ohio.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Rob Vogt. My address is 775 Park Street, Columbus, 43215. I'm a partner with the market research firm of Vogt Strategic Insights. I have been engaged in completing market studies for the past 35 years, I'm afraid to admit. We have done market studies for a wide variety of developers across the country and here in Central Ohio. TNR Properties had asked me to take a look at the market for them to determine how this particular property might fit in within the overall picture of rental housing within Delaware. We had a survey, and was our letter distributed to the city council members, Jeff?
Yeah, I think the last time you were here.
That was with the planning department, but they passed it on to the city council members.
Well, it's part of the record.
Okay.
Have it again.
Okay.
That'd be good.
Okay. Well, I had a letter that was dated from April 27th, and we were fortunate enough that we were into the market here in Delaware, conducting a market study for a tax credit application. And during the process, we surveyed over 3,600 apartments in Delaware and found that we had a vacancy rate of about 2.1%. What that tells me as a market analyst is that we clearly have a market where the demand exceeds the supply for apartments, that we have a greater need than we're able to supply the rental housing market. What we have found is that in a well-balanced market where there's choices within the marketplace, you should have about a 5% vacancy factor. 5% is typically where you have enough apartments that come up to rent to allow people who are coming to the market to find a place to live, and for those folks who are leaving the market. So what this analysis tells me is that I don't want to use the term critical, but I think there is clearly a market here for apartments that can be supported, and the important piece here is that the project that's proposed by TNR is going to fill a niche within the marketplace, and that is a higher end luxury type apartment property. I think that as a community, as you are trying to attract major employers, one of the things we're hearing from, and I hear this from Morpsey all the time, is that you have to have a balance of different types of products for sale, for rent, apartment or properties in order to attract the kind of people who want to work at these facilities. And in fact, I know that major employers are looking at communities to see the kind of housing they offer. Amazon, the H2 thing is one of the big factors that they're looking at the city of Columbus is, do we have enough affordable housing? That's clearly an issue. But I think here in Delaware, as you attract higher end employers, the important piece is to offer a variety of housing options. And right now, at a 2.1% vacancy rate, we don't have enough apartment options to offer to folks that are interested in the community. So from that standpoint alone, I have strong belief that there's a market for this property. In order to provide the kind of amenities that the project is proposing, I think as Tammy has indicated, that it has to be of a certain size, or you're not going to get those project amenities. And apartment renters today have gotten more sophisticated. They want better amenities. One of the things that we're finding is that millennials are staying in apartments longer because they can't get the kind of single-family housing that luxury apartments offer. We're finding older adults are migrating to apartments because it gets them away from the burden of maintaining a house. So when you begin to see what this project offers and the benefit it offers to the community, it's providing a type of housing that we don't have, and it's going to be supported in the marketplace by the folks who are already here and by folks who are coming to Delaware looking for employment. So I urge you to read my letter. I think it, the one other point I wanted to make is that what our analysis had shown is that there are over 2,700 renters currently in what we consider to be the market area, but it's mostly the city of Delaware, who have incomes of $40,000 or more that can afford the apartments that are offered on this site. Those 180 units represents a 6% capture rate. And what I mean by that is that we have to capture 6% of the income qualified renters in order to support that project. That's a low capture rate. Anytime I say capture rate over 10, 11, 12%, I get a little worried about it. In this case, there's a more than an ample share of income qualified renters to support this project.
Can you opine the difference in a project like this as far as impact is concerned between 140 and 180 units?
Well, Jeff, I'm not an expert in terms of the financial aspect of it, but I do know from my experience that the kinds of more high-end properties that we have seen that offer the kind of project amenities that might include a pool, exercise facility, bocce court in this case, that in order to cover the cost, to spread the costs over a number of units, you have to have this size of a project to be able to offer these types of luxury amenities.
Would attached garages be one of those?
Absolutely.
Amenities?
Absolutely. Although many times those are built separately in some cases, but we generally don't find those in smaller projects.
And you made a point about how millennials can't get housing. I assume you're referring to financially and the cost of a new house.
Yeah. What we're finding is that millennials find apartments to be quite pleasing. Again, this project is going to attract primarily 1, 2, and 3 person households, which again minimizes the impact on the school district because there's going to be so few children amongst these renters. But what we're finding among millennials is the kind of housing that they can rent today is not the kind of housing they can find on a for sale situation. The cheapest house we can build today is well over $250,000 to get anything close to where they want in terms of amenities. So this is simply provides another option to millennials that is simply a trend in the marketplace today.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
With the caveat that if the letter is, I think the letter circulated the last time. If not, I'd like to add that to the record and as well. And I'm assuming perhaps Mr. Eflin can let me know this, or Mr. Schulman, that the proceedings of the Planning Commission will become part of the record here. Is that correct?
It was in the packet.
Yeah, all the documents and whatnot move along.
And from the last hearings, et cetera, we would just want to make sure that all our documents that we presented over these.
Yeah, they should all be in the packet. I believe, Elaine, that was like 300 pages. Is that correct? Because you submitted a report and, yeah, it's in there.
And I'm assuming that the staff recommendation has not changed since the last meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we will open it up to the public. And the first thing I'm going to say is I want to keep this professional tonight. I don't want to hear anything negative about personal, about anybody. So we're going to keep this very professional. The first one on the list is Deborah K. Logan. And if you'll state for the record your name and address, please.
Hi, my name is Deb Logan, and I live at 102 Diverston Lane and in Adelaide Park. My home is the third closest to the project. And I did revise my letter because I found out some new information. Regrettably, since I was teaching a graduate level class the evening of May 7th, I was unable to attend the Planning Commission public comments hearing. Neighbors told me that the developer and his representatives gave approximately 2 hours of testimony. I have been told that the developer's return on investment was the key focus of the evening's testimony and discussion. I feel it is important to state that I believe and have often said that everyone should be fairly compensated for work done. As a homeowner in Adelaide Park who did due diligence and was told by the City of Delaware that the number of units in the location referred to as Area 3 would be in line with the comprehensive plan, I would also like to talk about return on investments. For myself, and I imagine most of my neighbors, my home is my largest personal asset. As council makes their decision, I would like council to be aware of the investments in our homes and the City of Delaware made by the residents of Adelaide Park. The increased density of the project has resulted in minimal distance between the two-story apartment building and the homes on the southern edge of Adelaide Park. My home is the second closest to the proposed largest building. While the Adelaide Park deed restrictions do not allow the residents of Adelaide Park to have outdoor pets, the apartments will permit pets. The largest block of buildings will be within approximately 110 feet from my property. The windows, and as of this evening, I now understand there are balconies. I don't know if they will be on that side of the building or not, will look down on my property and my one-story home. The pets, music, and future residents, apartment residents, will be heard on mine and other adjacent properties. Now, I now know that they're looking at putting some additional landscaping in, but I want to add that the landscaping easement on my property is 25 feet deep into my property. And I want to be, and under the, let me find it, Article 12 of the deed restrictions placed on my property. It states that the buffer is hereby reserved to the developer, which means I can't add additional landscaping. So I want to know that landscaping isn't just limited to that mound. So also, I want to make another point. The properties along that southern edge, lots 8533 through 8649, which is my property, are not permitted fences under section 5.303-F of the Adelaide Park deed restrictions. The developer's landscaping and fencing restrictions on my property, combined with the proximity and height of the proposed buildings, will negatively impact my property value, while also impeding the possibility of privacy for my property. This high-density apartment complex within 110 feet of my property will negatively impact both my investment and quality of life. While my property is one of the three most adversely affected by the increase in density, there is no question that my neighbor's investments will also be negatively impacted by the proposed changes. While the developer has extensive holdings, my home is my one largest personal asset. As the council votes, I urge them to be good stewards of the investments made by the residents of Adelaide Park. Should this development proceed with your approval, again, the landscaping and not just a border, but into my property, I request that that be made. And once again, I want to thank you for your time and consideration as we continue to work together to make Delaware a wonderful community where people want to live. Respectfully, Deborah K. Logan.
Thank you. Karen Kaufman?
I have some pictures that I thought I'd just share with you. My name's Karen Kaufman. I live at 107 Diverston Way. I just handed you pictures of the property that Sabatino is required to maintain. And you can see he's not doing it as usual. I do want to say, like what Deb was saying, my home is my investment. That's it. That's my big asset that I have. And when I purchased the house, again, I'm told 140 units. I didn't even like that, but I thought, well, I can deal with it. And now it's 180. And as far as the decrease in total density, I don't buy it. Mr. Sabatino said in the last planning meeting that that second section where he's reducing the numbers wasn't like apartment ready or something to that effect. Like he couldn't have put that many units on it anyways. So he's not compromising. Another question that I have is amenities. I keep hearing amenities. I'm like, well, define that. I mean, is it a swimming pool? Is it tennis courts? Is it, like an open area deck and a fire pit? We have no idea. He's just throwing vague terms around. It just seems kind of strange to me. So I just think that as a homeowner, Adelaide Park, that I have every much right to have the 140 based on when I bought the house, that was the information I was given me. So he has money, so he wants to sue. Oh, okay, does that mean I get to sue then if 180 units goes up because I was given wrong information? So anyways, something struck me when we were saying the Pledge of Allegiance. It ends, liberty and justice for all. With the gentleman behind me, I think it's liberty and justice for those with the most money.
Thank you. Scott Kinslow?
Do we want, this shows all the amenities if she wants to. Do you want me to send it around?
No.
Right.
And let me pass those pictures back so the city council can see.
I'm sorry, we didn't realize you didn't see.
These guys did it. Thank you. Hi, Scott.
Hi.
What's your name and address, please?
Scott Kinslow, 107 Diverston Way. One of the pictures that you have there is an abandoned pond, which would be at the northwest corner of this property, next to the topsoil piles. We call it abandoned because it's essentially a mosquito farm. For the last 8 years that we've been there, it's been full of mosquitoes. All of the neighbors around that area can't even take their trash out. We can't go to the mailbox without running and getting bitten. The kids can't come out and play. It is so bad. We call the city twice a year. The city says, it's not ours. We can't help you with it. So we usually get sprayed once and that's it. That goes towards the abandonment of not taking care of the properties. And we fear that even as this one gets developed, that pond goes away. But what happens to the next place where the topsoil piles move and the next hole is dug and the mosquitoes move on for new neighbors? In the previous meeting here at City Council, Mr. Sabatino stated that areas 3 and 4 are one single property. He made a comparison that this was like chairs in the front yard and chairs in the backyard. He said, this is simply moving chairs from the backyard to the front yard. There's a point at which I believe that you can have so many chairs together that you cannot sit in them. With many people crammed into this location, we think that 180 chairs is far too many. Should the city decide to approve Midrock's plan, we would ask to add a condition to help with better buffer and transition. In addition to filling in that triangle with trees, we would like the applicant to provide Adelaide Park Homeowners Association funds for a tree and fence program. This would provide for more mature trees and a common fence for all of the properties, the backyards essentially adjacent to Boulder Drive. There's no money in anybody's pocket. It's a administered program by the HOA, and we ask for $7,000 for each property, which is 7 homes. That's all we're asking to, if this is put through, to add a condition that we can put more mature trees and planting and a common fence along that edge of the properties. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to come forward at this time that did not sign the sheet? Yes, sir.
My name is Bob Cantu. I live at 356 Braxton Street in the Heatherton complex off of Houck Road. And I am a little bit late to the party. This is my first time coming here to a council meeting, but my wife and I are a little concerned hearing what I've heard today, that there are 40 more units being planned to add to this. That may not have anything to do with the number of people living there, but it means 40 more households, 40 more vehicles. I'm wondering what the effect is going to be on Houck Road, both coming up from the 42 and also coming in from the Highway 36. There's a lot of building going on there right now, as you all know, with the other developments going in there now. And I just think this is going to really impact that area tremendously. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Kathy Trotter. I live at 524 Leonard Woods Boulevard. I spoke at the last meeting as well. Mr. Sabatino bought this property in 1999. In 1999, he said that he had the opportunity, if things changed, to readdress the amount of units that would go into the area. Since then, the YMCA and the Armory have come into being. It was something that the community voted for. We knew it was coming. We knew it was going to add a lot of people to the area. There are a lot of young families that go to the YMCA. There are a lot of things that go on at the Armory that bring a lot of people into that area. It's quite congested anyways. There's a soccer field behind. It's very congested when soccer time comes around. Also the water park. When you put 140 units in there, and even if each one of those people only has one car, which is highly unlikely, that's 140 people that are traveling to and from that area every single day. Adding 40 more is a lot. When you talk about density in some other areas may not be a big issue. The density at the time was 140 units. And because we have so much other things going on in the area, I just feel like 40 more is way too much. It's young families, it's young children. So many people walk that path. It's accident waiting to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Do you want to address any of the questions?
I'll try my best, and I'll turn it over to the expert for, where I fall short. So, again, there were comments about density and more dwellings. These two parcels are a block apart. One's on the west of the park, the other's on the east of the park. It's a net decrease in density of 25 dwellings, moving 65 dwellings off of the back and 40 of those out on Houck Road where they'll have less traffic. As it relates to the impact, again, ordinarily, one would presume that any builder is allowed to build their building at the building setback line. So buildings on Boulder Drive at the building setback line, irrespective of the number of dwellings, can be at the building setback line. We've moved these 20 feet south of the building setback line, further away from Boulder Drive, and added over 100 trees and a 5-foot mound. There were comments about pets, although we will be a non-smoking community, we do allow pets. Half of our tenants will have a pet, a cat or a dog. We don't allow any outdoor pets, period. No pets on a leash. It's tied to their back door. You know, if somebody's walking their dog, they can walk their dog, but we don't allow outdoor pets. I'm not sure where that comment came from. These dwellings are all 2 stories, generally the same height of most of the 2-story houses in the development. The amenities, I don't know, bring me the boards up, if you will, Miles, and I'll be glad to state the amenities that.
Miles, it's over there against the wall.
I've got them listed here, Ron.
Okay. That I believe have been presented before. On-site management, a community center, exercise facility, outdoor patio and deck, barbecue area, dog washing station, electric car charging station, the first one for your city, swimming pool, outdoor lounge, outdoor fireplace, community gardens, 24-hour, I'm not sure whether we're going to use Amazon or someone else, 24 hours, 7 days a week, access to storage lockers for deliveries from UPS or FedEx or Amazon. A dog park, bocce ball courts, walking and bike trails. In addition, this community will be HERS, HERS rated. So from an energy efficiency standpoint, it'll also be your first HERS rated community. Your building code requires a rating of, an effective rating of around 92. To be HERS rated, lower is better, and you're required to be below 70, which means that the insulation, the energy efficiency of our appliances, the energy efficiency of a furnace and water heaters will be significantly different than a typical $250,000 home. Again, from chairs from the backyard to chairs from the front yard, we're not putting any chairs in the front yard. In fact, we're taking them further away from the building setback line than we're permitted to.
I think before you move, someone asked about a balcony towards Boulder Drive. Will there be balconies on the backside also?
Yeah, let's, can we pull up the photograph again, the rendering?
I'd love to do that for you, but the laptop has decided to restart itself. So I'm trying to get the presentation over here to Elaine's, and then I'll turn it back on again.
Yeah, there are small balconies.
Okay.
On the first floor, it's a patio, small patio. And the second one, again, it's a small balcony that primarily, let people get some fresh air.
I just tried to write down as people spoke. So.
Yeah.
Okay.
My only comment, I think, is to reinforce the point again that a property has to be of this size in order to offer the kind of amenities that are being proposed in this overall development. And I think it's very hard in order to, and as Mr. Sabatino just read off, how do you provide those level of amenities if you have a smaller project? And financially, I have not seen it in the marketplace where you can offer that extensive of the amenities. So the important point here, at least from a market analyst standpoint, is that in order to provide the kind of luxury housing that renters are looking for today, you need to have this number of units and you need to have these kinds of amenities. And again, the important point being that we don't have those choices currently in Delaware, and this is an opportunity to provide that at a very low cost to the city.
And I think one other comment was regarding whether Houck Road could handle the extra traffic. And I think our engineer's spoken to this several times and said, yes, at this point, yes, it can. So at some point there may need to be a light up there, but right now the study did not show that. So I don't remember who asked that question, but thank you.
Mayor,
Yes.
what's the industry average or industry standard for density for a luxury apartment setting?
In Columbus, it's about 12 to 14 units an acre. That question actually is getting a lot of study today because we're all talking about increased density. Now, I know it doesn't apply to a very ex-urban community like Delaware, but the point is that people recognize that density is an acceptable practice, that we've got to find places for people to live. And increasing density is a common trend in a lot of communities today.
Thank you. Mr. Sabatino, how many parking spots are available at the site?
Dave, can you help me? It's over 2 per dwelling.
Yeah, I think it's 372
Yeah.
between service and
Eliminated all 3
parking.
bedrooms?
Yes, no 3 bedrooms.
Is that why the density?
So, Madam Mayor, just on the parking real quick, the number of spaces does comply with the 2 per unit requirement of our code, just to finish that thought.
Okay. Anything else you want to address? The new pond, will it have an aerator in it so that the water's not stagnant?
Well, that current storm pond was built and actually is a functional stormwater pond with an outlet going into the current storm drains on Houck Road. That pond will be reshaped and it will have a fountain in it that keeps the water fresh.
Less mosquitoes, right?
Yeah.
Yes, okay. All right. How you doing over there, Dave? Not well? Okay.
It's 24% complete. I mean,
Tree count calipers?
There was a comment regarding caliper inches, I believe, regarding tree caliper from Mr.
Well, they were
Kinslow.
asking about extra trees and a common fence. I think that's right.
Something like that.
Let me attempt to speak to, if they have deed restrictions that have been, recorded for all of the homeowners, the deed restrictions cannot be violated until the deed restrictions are modified by the homeowners association. As it relates to the buffering, we've agreed to do the, what I'll describe as the Houck Road buffering along Olive Border Drive, as well as the easement that's in the one lady's side yard. But we will plant all those trees and mound it, and we could work with staff to, even allow the neighbors to look at the drawings before we begin of how the mounding goes along the north side of Boulder Drive.
Okay, I got people in the audience who want to come back up and ask another question, so I'm going to have you, unless anybody else has any questions for these two. Okay.
There was a comment about 3 and 4 stories on these units. I just wanted to clarify, there's not.
Okay, we can't have bantering here in the audience. We have to come to the microphone if you have a question. So I'll have you 2 step away. I think, Karen, you asked the question first. If you want to come back to the microphone, they.
Scott's going to do it.
Okay.
He's going to do it. So, go on.
Scott Kinslow again. Karen's remark about the density was when they were talking about those higher numbers, I'm sorry, was it 13, 14 that you said?
That's in Columbus.
Per acre.
This density is lower than that.
Okay, this density is lower than that, and we have 2 stories here. Does your density number have 3 stories, 4 stories, or is it 2-story as well, is my question. Because the density that you're building here is based on 2 stories. So Karen's remark was based on, sure, we can get higher density out of 3 and 4 stories. You stack people up, you can increase that density per acre. I wanted to clarify that what I was asking for was for the 7 adjacent properties that are next to this on Boulder Drive is to provide funds to the homeowners association so that the homeowners association can build a common fence and add additional trees, mature trees, inside of the backyards of those homes to help improve the buffer and the transition going from our neighborhood across the street to the apartments. This is not money for anybody else. This is just for an allotment for more mature trees to be built. We realize that we will have to go through the process with the deed restrictions to modify those with a 75% vote, and they have to be recorded by the city. We'll go through the process that we need to adapt to those deed restrictions so that we can get those better trees and so that we can get that fence. Right now, we cannot, but we're willing to go through that process. Just a clarification.
Now, when you say, step down, when you say, sorry.
That usually means yes, Karen.
So these 7 properties, you're talking the what, which 7 are you referring to?
The 7 properties that are on the southern edge of Adelaide Park that border this triangle and also Boulder Drive.
Because you know the triangle that he's agreed to
Yes.
fill in and then
Right.
go on farther into the next property with the
Yes.
permission to put some down to Harmony Way.
Yes, and it squeezes down into a triangle, and we realize that Boulder Drive with the right-of-way and the sight lines that need to happen, there will be trees removed over on the road that are already there now, that some of those trees will be relocated, and that some of that mounding will bridge into that triangle that's there. We are asking, because one of the things that we've asked for many times is a better transition to go from our $300,000 homes to apartments, which then turns into YMCA and industrial down the street. We simply want to be able to add more additional trees, more mature trees, not little saplings that are 2 or 3 inches, but more mature trees in our backyards to help with buffer and transition between our neighborhood and what's going on here.
Okay.
If this is approved, we would like that to be a condition.
Okay.
Thank you.
And then you have another comment or question?
Yes.
You have to go to the microphone.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry.
Okay. All right.
Deb Logan again for the record.
Thank you. My question is, and it kind of relates to Scott's, is that I have, in addition to the soldering I'm hearing that is to go along Boulder on the north side, 20, that's not going to go, but maybe, I'm guessing 10 feet into my property. I have a 25-foot band across the entire back of my property. Will that be addressed? That is reserved to Medrock. Will that be?
I don't know which one's yours.
Okay, I can show you.
I can show you which one's mine.
You're this one, the corner?
Well, and I also, I have to have my glasses on. Where did I put the papers at? Thank you. Here. Can you, I am
It's a lot to the west of the ones on Harms.
right here, right here. And a whole 25-foot, so I'll go back to the microphone.
Okay.
All right.
There's a 25-foot band across my backyard, not just a place for soldiering, that the landscaping is reserved to Medrock. I want that 25 feet filled with mature trees for my privacy, especially now that I find out there are going to be balconies looking down on my one-story home, into my one-story home. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to address? Is there anybody else before Ron comes forward? Okay, come on. This is it.
When we turned the homeowners association over, it had a cash balance of approximately $45,000. I suspect it has more than that today, a couple years ago. As it relates to the comments about additional buffering, the view from a balcony to her home is no different than the view from her home out of her second-story window to our community. I mean, the balcony is like a window as it relates to looking down. I mean, looking down, you're looking over for the few times that somebody's going to go out on the balcony. We don't allow grills. There's no cooking on our, I mean, nobody's going out there to cook. We don't allow smoking, so nobody's going out there to smoke. I would, however, ask for maybe a 5-minute recess so that we could speak with some of the neighbors, talk about the request that the one lady made. Maybe if we meet with, briefly, with anyone here that is in one of those homes that buffers us, we'd like to do that. If
Yeah, you can take a 5-minute break. It's 8:05. I want to resume at 8:15. Is that okay with everybody?
Thank you.
everything going, sorry. 8:14, yes. Minute early, good job.
We met with 3 of the homeowners that live immediately adjacent to us. And we've agreed to meet with them and with staff and have them participate in the design of the mound and the trees that will go along their border. And we're willing to do that for passage of our request for 180 dwellings tonight.
Okay. I will close the public hearing at this time and look to my counsel for comments.
Excuse me? What is on the record? What are you talking about? What in the? I don't know what you're talking about.
Council comments?
Looks like a nice development. Thank you for putting it forward. Nice design, nice property.
I guess I'm still trying to understand the density issues. You know, is there any compromise between 180 and bringing that down at all? It sounds like we're addressing the buffering and the mounting, and the only other issue I'm hearing is the concern of the density of the area. That's
And Chris, Mr. Jones, again, the difference between 180 and some number smaller than that is invisible to anyone outside the community, in that we would ordinarily put our buildings on the building setback line. So the additional density that is coming from the other parcel in the back effectively decreasing the density by 25 units is going in the interior portions of this property, and with the buffering and the additional setback that every building on Boulder Drive is beyond and south of the setback line, it's invisible to the neighbors. Again, I think that we've made an agreement with my representation on the record. I thought one of the parties asked me to put it in writing, and I attempted to say, even though it's not in writing, it's on the record that we will do what I just said.
Madam Mayor, members of council, I don't know what the nature of the deal is or what council is inclined to do, but compromise between the put in writing and Mr. Sabatino be on the record is we can write that in as a condition to passage, however it is, and then that would be in writing for whatever you decide to do. I mean, that can be accomplished without having to do a contract here, if that's something council is considering.
Okay, the public hearing is closed at this time. I'm looking for comments from the council.
So I feel like stating that the additional density would be invisible to the residents. We're hearing from the residents that they don't feel like that would be invisible. Mm-hmm. And the difference could be the sizing down of some of the buildings that would be closest to where the residents live. And so I'm wondering if there is some compromise available to make those buildings a bit smaller so that they don't seem quite so large and domineering right next to the single family homes that are adjacent. Is that something that we could talk about doing? It's gone back to planning. We were hoping to see that. It came back to us and at the same density. Is there any room?
So Lisa, would it be helpful then if our planning department gets back with the developers and see if we can come up with some compromise that would accomplish that?
I would like, before we do that, to get some agreement from the developer that he's willing to do that, because we've gone down that road before and sent it back to planning and came back at 180. So if he's willing, then because I'm thinking if we lose an amenity or two, then some of those units could come down, and there's got to be some middle ground here somewhere.
Agreed. Or if there's price elasticity in the demand for those units. Throwing some quick pencils on here, you know, at the number that was given of $14,000 of revenue per unit. You know, depending on the demand price elasticity on these units, unless you're at the very top of that, I think you can recover a significant amount of that revenue by adjusting your unit costs, your unit pricing. But, you know, you guys are the professionals here. I don't know, but if, you know, if you're already at the top, yeah, maybe you don't have any movement.
Kyle, do you have anything to add?
I would just say that we can't run this man's business, so we have to give him a density that we can live with, and then he has to do the professional part of it. That's not what our role is.
And part of me, when I keep hearing density over and over, and I know you're saying you've got a setback lines, that it's invisible, but also density means the amount of cars, the amount of traffic in their neighborhood that are already there. That's what I keep thinking. It's just not the houses, the apartments that are built here. It's the overall amount of people that's going to be added to it. And I don't know that you're seeing that's where my mind keeps going anyway. So I apologize for that. So Lisa or Chris, one of them asked, is there any room at all in a reduction? Would you like this to go back to planning before it goes back, or?
Am I allowed to speak?
Yes, you're allowed to speak. Go to the microphone, please, just so it's on the record better. Apologize for making you come back and forth.
We really need 180. I think that Mr. Rohr's comment was not inappropriate. You know, we want what we want, and you guys are going to do what you're going to do. And if you're going to do what you're going to do, we'd like you to do it this evening. You know, we'd like 180, but if it's 179, then Tammy's, you know, am I going to buy a new pair of shoes?
Okay. What is the wish of council?
Oh, I'm hearing 180, so I mean.
Somebody make a motion, one way or the other.
Where's the mounting you guys were talking about? What portion are we talking about on that mounting there? You meet with these folks in the corner?
Yeah.
The top right corner there?
Yes.
On the which one shows it the with the aerial?
Yeah, on the north side that's toward the top, north of the pond, you'll see kind of a triangular piece of the line around it that backs up to, looks like three and a half of the homes, and then there's 3 more homes as you go further to the right, to the east. And on that side of Boulder Drive, I indicated that we would not only build the mound and the trees and work out the design with the neighbors and staff, but also when it was built and completed and Boulder Drive was platted, that we would dedicate that parcel to their homeowners association.
Madam Mayor, I don't know if this would be helpful. Do you mind if I interrupt? And
Jump right in there.
I do apologize. Obviously, it's completely a legislative decision for council to decide, and you've heard the testimony from both sides. Based on council's feedback at the last, discussion at the last meeting, and Steph, Dave and I did work on just some language that you could consider if you wanted to try. Mr. Councilman Jones is asking about compromise plans and issue with the buffering stuff. So we did have some language that we came up with. It's I just write what people ask me to do. I can't tell you what to vote on, but I did work it up. If you want to look at it, we were working on that. That's why I was late to the meeting. So if you want to take a look at it, I can hand it out, but I have to print out more copies. So
Can you summarize what the changes would be?
yeah, basically, and Dave, please jump in with me. Can you show me that one picture? Basically, there's something called building number 7. Can you point to it for me, Dave?
Of course, this is that way. This is how, and this is forward. Building 7 is this.
So what just the draft that I came up with would do is take the right half of 7, which is 8 units. Can you point to it, Dave? Good thing I want you to get on your shoes, because then the other piece is it takes 8 units off of 8. Well, what they had me do was 8.
And then right here is what you're describing.
Yeah, so it's not a.
Part of 7, this is part of 8.
Yeah, so if you went with that, it would be in the middle. So you'd be at 164 according to that plan. But we can change it to whatever you want from there.
Okay,
I need a break.
all right, we'll take a break.
I need a break.
They would like to defer it so that staff can get together.
I'm fine with that. I know that's.
That's not what Mr. Sabatino wants.
So if we can get this worked out, then everybody's satisfaction.
Yeah, I agree.
So the next meeting is to the 11th.
Well, I think I'll just throw something out. You may want to ask him, the developer, if he would rather have some vote that he might not be happy with tonight, or if he wants to wait till the next meeting, only because he's got a project that he's working on as well.
Yeah.
He had a chance to go back to Planning Commission and revise his plan. Here we are. What reading are we on? What number are we on for this? We keep asking for compromise. We asked for compromise at Planning Commission. We're asking for compromise now.
I asked for a motion, nobody wanted to do anything. If you don't want to accept it, then deny it. If you want to do an amendment, do an amendment. If you want to defer it, then defer it.
We don't, I mean, Darren just threw out that, I have to go back to Kent's, I think there's still be some more conversation between the developer and the residents.
Well, in our planning standard.
Yeah,
I think we could probably get this where everybody can live with it.
I mean, I think that the unintended consequences of, the delays, we got a letter today of the development area for the subdivision to the east. The grass is too high, so, why is it too high? Because we told the contractor not to cut it because we expected it to have been, disturbed by now. We're kind of at the end of time to complete access that will potentially prevent more than a year or years of all the construction traffic with no alternative to get to Halk Road but the neighbors. Our preference would be, if you choose to have an executive session, and we like a vote if somebody's got a different alternative tonight, then present it. But yeah, we think that we've compromised 5 times, more so tonight with the pledge with the neighbors, which we're willing to do.
Do you want to go into executive session? Do you want to defer it? He does not want it. He wants to vote tonight, it sounds like, because of timing for building.
Why don't we go to executive session? Yeah, I agree. I'll move to go into executive session, come up with our final decision, what we're going to approve.
And the reason for the executive session, I assume, is the potential to resolve potential litigation that we discussed last week. We have to have a open meetings, all reason.
So I move to go into executive session.
Oh, you got to vote. You got to vote. Can you take roll real quick, Elaine?
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
We're going to press on.
Yes, we're going to press on. 8:41, we'll call the meeting back to order. Wish of council.
Okay, I'd like to amend, correct me if I'm wrong, ordinance number 1821 and ordinance 1822. And I'm sorry, I guess I should start with this. The city was provided a SketchUp of the development that indicated 172 units could be doable. And with that in mind, we looked at the number 168 by removing the east half of building number 7 and then 4 units from the north side of building 8. So we'd like to amend 1821 and 1822 to eliminate the east half of building 7 and 4 units at the north of building 8 and keep to the promises that you discussed with the neighbors. Wow, that's tight.
You couldn't plan it better.
And so he has spoken.
And by looking at these 2 buildings, those are the 2 buildings closest to the neighbors.
Yep.
Could we get some enumeration of what the promises were that were made to the neighbors so that we can get those on the record?
They're on the record.
They already said it.
Does this include, Dave, the additional landscaping that was discussed as far as that island?
Yeah, that's what I understand that you just said.
Let's see, additional landscaping, residents are part of the committee.
This is the bounding and landscaping on the north side of Boulder Drive on the Medrock LLC property, the remainder piece of the subject property, and I believe it's the Logan property with the easement.
Yeah.
That makes sense that everybody's nodding their head yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
I'll second Ron's motion.
So it's procedure-wise, because I hear some people grumbling. So hold on, what's going to happen is this isn't a vote to amend the ordinance. This is not a vote on the actual ordinance. This vote would require 4 votes. The ultimate passage, because it was a recommendation of denial from the Planning Commission, would take 5 votes for the ultimate vehicle, but this is just an amendment proposal. So now you can debate the amendment if you want, but that's what you'd be voting on, and that would take 4 votes. And then you could debate the final bill as it is. And just for council's awareness, because I haven't had a chance to write this up, I'm gonna have to go back through the record. Some of the changes will be easy. We'll take the number from 180 to 168. I can do that fairly easily. It's the other word stuff. I'll have to write another condition that encapsulates what you said. We can do that.
Okay, so I have a motion by Mr. Browning, a second by Mr. Schaefer on the amendment. Any further discussion? Roll call, quick.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
Okay, I will move for passage of ordinance number 1821 and ordinance 1822. As amended. Thank you.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Browning, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes.
That did have 5 votes, so it does pass.
I know. Just seems like there should be more, but we voted on 21 and 22 at the same time. I'm a little nervous about that.
Break it up if you like. Do you mind voting again on each?
No, I would rather, we did one. Let's just separate them because they should be 2 separate votes. They're 2 different numbers. So make the amendment or the motion again for 1822, if you will.
Okay. I'd like to move to pass ordinance number 1822 as amended.
Second.
Okay, motion by Mr. Browning, second by Mr. Schaefer. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mrs. Keller?
Yes.
Mr. Browning?
Yes.
Mr. Rohr?
Yes.
Mr. Hellinger?
No.
Vice Mayor Schaefer?
Yes.
Mayor Riggle?
Yes, motion carries. Okay. City manager's report. Don't look at me like that.
I have nothing.
You have nothing. Council comments? Okay. Somebody else having council comments? Okay. Happy
Motion to
Memorial
adjourn.
Day. Motion
Move
to
to
adjourn. We're adjourned at 8:46. You had to do something.